Welcome, of course, also from my side. And, well, we have to see that the Russian aggression against Ukraine created a very strange, unforeseen situation for Europe. We wanted to concentrate on the aftermath of the COVID crisis. We wanted to concentrate on the climate policy and the Green Deal. And all of a sudden came the war. So war came back to Europe, what I think nobody expected. And the European Union tried to react in two ways: support the defense of Ukraine against the Russian aggression and offering membership. When I remember the times in the European Parliament when I was always saying, well, according to the status, to the constitution, all European countries can apply for membership. Part of Ukraine have been part of Austria-Hungary, and as far as I know, Austria-Hungary was not part of, or had no part in Asia. So it was obvious, but it was always declined. Also, only the idea of Ukraine applying for membership. All of a sudden it was possible. But of course, we still have a part of our continent where we have open, unfulfilled promises, especially the Western Balkan, and you know it as well because you are interested in that region. Now, the unfulfillment in the Western Balkans, of course, is not only due to the enlargement fatigue on the European side, EU side, but also because of the unfulfilled and unpromoted reforms necessary for joining the European Union. And in spite of what some people say, for example, recently also the Hungarian foreign minister, enlargement or membership of the European Union is not just a geopolitical decision, yes or no. It's a question of sound political, economic, and value policy and basis in the countries. Now, the countries in the Western Balkans, of course, are sometimes disappointed about quick promises given to Ukraine, where it seems to proceed step by step, and the very slow policies and enlargement strategies towards the Western Balkans. But some politicians still don't understand that it is also about values, rule of law. And when we see the recent events in Kosovo these days, and I don't want to blame only the Serb side, we see that some politicians don't understand what is necessary to build a common Europe. History, events of long time past ago and recent past are misused by politicians to enhance their own political interest and not the interest of a common Europe. And it is like William Faulkner once said, the past is never dead, the past is not even past. But this is the idea of European Union, not to make it dead, but at least to say it is a past, and it is not the most important issue of the present. But of course it's not only Kosovo. Think about the debates always you have between Serbia, Croatia, on Jasenovac, on Bleiburg, and other issues. We still have who is the real criminals. Is it the Chetniks or is it the Ustashas and so on? All these debates, not on a scientific basis, but on a nationalistic orientations, are not fostering a common European strategy. But of course, it's not only Eastern European or non-EU countries. If you look about the situation in Hungary or in Poland, where now is on, as I read yesterday, a new group has been or is to be installed, which is looking into the past activities of some politicians, if they had been enough anti-Russian or not in order to be a candidate. Obviously, it seems that Mr. Tusk, who is not a political friend of mine, but is an honest person, should not be possible to run. Well, this selection reminds me of the situation in Iran and Turkey, but not on a European country, or a country with European values. Now about the Ukraine, because this is the main issue. Thanks very much to the organizers. Ukraine, we see it as it is today, and of course it is today united in order to defend itself against the Russian aggression. But what kind of compromises will be necessary if we want to have an armistice and a peace? What will mean the end of the war, hopefully soon, for the internal domestic integration and peace and stability in the country? How can integration into EU proceed, especially concerning the size of the country and its population, but also the economic situation? When we see that some of the countries, including Poland, immediately reacted very strongly against grain exports going through Poland to other countries, with the possibility that some of the grain stays in the country, then all this favor and all this enthusiasm for Ukraine was brought down to no exports of grain. And then the EU had to find some compromise. So I warn that all this enthusiasm in some countries will be realized when the facts on the ground are different, and when it's not only against Russia, but also about the European Union. And again, not only small countries like Austria or countries in the south will have to realize the balance between South and North inside the European Union will be changed. So what is necessary, and I hope to get some information, some ideas also from your side, is that a new form of integration process has to be thought of and established. Now, there are already some ideas about step-by-step, or so-called stage integration in the European Union in order to adapt to the EU itself, but also the countries who want to join have to adapt to the integration with some limits, even of the rights of these new countries for some time at least. The majority role, especially in foreign policy, defense policy, has to be thought about to give a boost to the geopolitical position of the European Union without, of course, overdoing it, because otherwise it could implode the European Union if some countries permanently see themselves overruled by other countries. The next big issue, of course, is the relation to Russia. Now, for some it is even an anathema or a sin to speak about Russia today, in a way not only seeing Russia as an aggressor, which it is, but seeing Russia as a neighbor, which will stay here. Now, very much depends on the situation in Russia itself, but we cannot influence it, and we don't know if it's going to the worse, even that would be possible, or to the better, or stay as it is. And we have to find a new situation and a new attitude towards Russia. Anyway, if we see that for the moment very much is concentrated on defense, which I understand. I don't say it shouldn't be done, but we have also to think that this must not be the new normal, that we spend a lot of money on defense instead of economic development, social development, environmental development, climate policy, and so on, because money is limited if we don't want to continue with the inflation. Disarmament must come back to the table in Europe, because otherwise it's a very risky game, even if now the question is not about disarmament of an armament, realistically, but in our mind, especially for the younger who will see that coming years passing by, that disarmament must be again on the table, because European Union is and must stay a peace project. Of course, a peace project with a strong arm to defend itself, but a peace project also in the interest with disarmament. And the last point I want to mention is, of course, also the global south. We see today that Europe cannot rely on the mood we have about the Russian aggression all over the world. Not only China has a different opinion, but if we look to South Africa, Brazil, wherever we look around, there are not many big countries who join our attitude towards the Ukraine war. Many countries voted for us, but if you see the population behind the countries who did not vote, were abstaining or even against, then it's a different, and we have to think about that. I want to mention one citation only by Simon Cooper. I mentioned him because he was very praising our work on the Belt and Road Initiative. So he has some understanding if he praises the Vienna Institute. And he says recently in last weekend's edition of the Financial Times citation, "I'm delighted we're back in Ukraine. It's the right thing to do. Secondarily, it helps the West. Having a common enemy creates unity, reduces silliness, and it reminds us that we actually have some values. But we are only doing it because Putin is killing white people in our neighborhood. We care as much about Yemen as South Africa does about Ukraine." End of the citation. So we have to see the reality. As far and as strong we have to defend our Europe, to have to defend Ukraine and our values, we have also to see that other countries see it quite differently, and we need them in our global strategy. For example, in the environmental strategy, the strategy against climate change, it is not possible without the global South. So thinking with the end about next year's election to the European Parliament, which gives some politicians the idea that there are also voters we have to think about, we have to convince them that we have to support Ukraine and its defense against Russian aggression. At the same time, we have to think about enlargement, even if better planned and organized. We have to implement the Green Deal on the European soil with defossilization and wrongly often called decarbonization. It's a defossilization, but not decarbonization. And we have to support global activities against climate change and the fight against inflation. So we see the huge task, and I'm very happy that this seminar and the organizers organize it in a way where we have all these subjects on the table, and I think many good ideas and contributions are necessary. Then, of course, politics, it's up to politics to translate the knowledge, the experience, the ideas into political, if you want, slogans or ideas. But it is very important if we don't want to give up our values, our democratic orientation, that we have to convince our citizens that these main objects and subjects we have to deal with are for the survival of Europe, not as a big power anymore, but as Europe as one element who is one entity who is trying to integrate various and economic issues at the same time. With that, I want to stop and again thank very much all the organizers. It's wonderful subjects here. I want to thank all participants, of course, all the speakers. And I think the best idea would be that tonight and tomorrow we have some good ideas we didn't think about. And I'm very sure this will be the case. Thank you.